Morning, everybody. Welcome to Island Biodiversity. And let's take a look at what we are going to be doing today in this laboratory. This is a pattern that varies based on different parameters of an island. And so when we get started looking at this kind of thing, we're going to be looking at the species richness and diversity based on several factors of an island's just the habitat itself, as well as its distance from the main body of land, as well as non-human and human interactions with it. So we take a look at the relationship on the islands, and we're paying attention to richness of multiple groups of animals and plants. So what they originally looked at, as you're going to see, is a comparison of some of the islands in the Caribbean and how they differed in their species diversity and richness. What we need to know here is that ecologists noted that species richness did not just increase with the size of island, it also tended to increase at a regular rate. So 10 times larger island leads to about twice as many species. Yeah, you should be writing notes. This is part of what you need. Let's be clear here. Your book does not do a great job with this, and so this is going to be probably your only background information about island biodiversity. So you should write some notes here. Okay, so let's go ahead and go on. So you'll notice that we have species to area relationship of the different islands. So while Puerto Rico and Jamaica and Hispaniola and Cuba are approximately the same area, you see some of the smaller islands have a lesser number of species, and that increases with size of island. So there's that. So when they started to look at patterns of richness of islands, what we figured out, or what I did not figure out anything. What the scientists figured out is that some large islands had fewer species than expected if you just look at their size. Some small islands tended to be more species rich, and they had to come up with an idea of, well, why did that happen? And it comes down to looking at the distance from a mainland body of land and its species, in other words, its source of species. So that had a great influence on it as well. So let's go ahead and get rid of that and take a look at, so here's our mainland, and if we have one island closer and another island farther away, then we are going to have a difference in richness of species. In other words, island number 1 has a greater richness as compared to island number 2. I think that kind of covers it. It makes sense that the island that is closer to the mainland would get greater number of species, just because those species do not have a farther distance across ocean to travel before they can find a place to live. Let's see here. Then, once a species manages to reach an island and colonize it, then we have a rate of extinction is largely influenced by the size of the island. This just makes sense because the larger the island, the greater the amount of ease with which you can affect a ecosystem and therefore cause a species to become extinct. So this extinction can happen due to many different ways. One of them is genetic drift. Other words is anthropogenic and non-anthropogenic reasons. So human interactions versus non-human interactions. So smaller islands hold fewer populations, and in general, they are easier to cause to become extinct. Larger islands have more and more habitat areas, generally giving species a greater chance to not become extinct. So larger habitat size reduces the probability of extinction of the colonized species. Smaller islands are likely to hold fewer populations in general because there are less resources and less diversity of resources. Larger islands have larger and more habitat areas, which leads to more differences in habitat and habitat heterogeneity. And as we found, that heterogeneity or the differences in those habitats help make a ecosystem, or a larger island-sized ecosystem, a much better place for species to become successful. It increases the number of species successfully colonizing and more opportunities for a variety of species. Yes, you should be writing notes for this. Okay, so when you look at that on this sort of map, you see the relationship of rate of migration as it compares to number of species. And then you see the relationship of number of species versus rate of extinction. So the greater number of species, the higher the rate of extinction, both for small and large islands. And the rate of the higher the rate of migration and the number of species is compared to the distance to the mainland. Okay, and then you can find this intersecting area in which they kind of reach a sweet spot where they're going to overlap. Sorry, not interlap. Overlap with their rate of extinction. So you can take a look at that relationship as well. Let's make sure that we get the general insights here. The blue line depends on proximity to the mainland. As we have the rate of immigration decreases as we increase the richness of the species. It makes sense that it's easiest to immigrate to an island when it's empty and all the resources are available. As the island gets more and more full, the colonizing becomes more difficult. As the island gets more and more full, colonizing the island becomes more difficult. Extinction rates depend on island size. The larger the island, the lesser the extinction rates. So we have that. And please go ahead. Yes, again, write your notes. If there are no species on an island, extinction is impossible. But as more and more species arrive, extinction becomes more and more likely. So that would be a very, very bad situation. All right. For the species involved, of course. Let's go ahead. Let's go ahead and take a look. Okay, so islands can be both a challenge and a great place to look at how do species become successful and how do they fall apart, and why does an island end up with a vast amount of species richness even if it's a very small island. And so in this exercise, we're going to simulate island biogeography using an online tool. And so we're going to go take a look at that online tool right here. And let's make sure that we have it. There it is. So when you go open your virtual island biogeography, and I'm going to bring that down here, virtual island biogeography lab. When you go open that lab, you will find that you are opening the virtual biology lab link right here. And when you go open that virtual biology lab for island biogeography, I'd like you to go through and read the background information. And it talks about the island biodiversity as it has to do with human interactions, and as it has to do with species richness and extinction as well. And you'll notice the same graph again here. And it talks about the relationships of island size to biodiversity. It also talks about the relationship of island distance to island biodiversity. I like how it went ahead and showed you a picture of the Hawaiian island chain right here. That's for those of you who don't know, that's the Big Island, and that's Maui, and that's Lanai, Molokai, and this right here, this is where I am right now. I'll be home next week, so you guys need to be making sure you take care of this assignment. It talks a little bit about the relationship of colonization to number of species and the number of species to extinction rate on the same one, and so this is another opportunity for note taking. And then it talks about productivity and biodiversity. In other words, what kinds of success are these species going to have based on the plants and the animals available for species to become successful, and how easy is it to colonize becomes more difficult without food and fresh water, of course, and whether or not there's a lot of interaction having to do with things like hurricanes and bad weather and the type of island you have, as in, is it tundra, is it desert, is it tropical, that kind of thing. Okay, so once you get through your background information, then I strongly recommend that you run through your tutorials. So the tutorials have you setting up the experiment design first. And so you have distance from the mainland, island diameter, what kinds of animals you're going to be looking at. Those are going to be the things that you look at first. Then go ahead and take a look at it from up above. We look down on the action and seeing what happens. All the little colors that you see represent the different species that you have. And so then we can go to identifying landscape settings. In other words, what kind of habitat is it? Do we have tropical, subtropical, so forth? And being able to identify the different things that you need. So we can change to subtropical, temperate, tundra, desert, or tropical, of course. And then the migration rate, how fast is the migration rate? And you can also take a look at the different animals you have and the migration and the mortality settings as well. Finally, you can also set it up for how fast you'd like it to go. So you'll notice the play, the stop, the fast forward, 1 times, 2 times, that kind of thing. So let's just take a look at the data collection. And here is where you can take a look at the data and how does it look and be able to record that on your own spreadsheet. So final instructions, you can make it go as fast as you want. So if you take a look at it, this is kind of showing you what this is. You can also move your island to farther away and closer in so that you can play with it a little bit. So let's go back to home. And now here you're going to be able to run your experiments. So to be able to run your experiment, you're also going to want to open up the Virgin Island Biogeography data table. And you'll notice that you are going to set it up as 3 different trials, Island 1 and Island 2, for 3 different trials. And it's telling you in trial 1, here are your parameters right here. Island 1, Island 2, so kilometers is 10, and Island 2, you get to change that yourself. That's why it's in green. And then migration rate should be set, and the island size should be set. So you get to change the distance and the island size for these trials. And so you're going to change those 1, 2, 3 times. And then you go on to distance and size manipulation, and you get to change the migration rate and mortality rate that time for 1, 2, 3 trials. And so that looks like you're going to be doing approximately 6 different manipulations here so that you can record your data. It looks like we had a lot going on here, and I went down to the bottom. It looks like you have no manipulation, a distance manipulation, a size manipulation, distance and size. It looks like you have a lot of manipulations you need to do. So let's go back to your directions here. Back to your directions. Before you get started, please read through the tutorial. You will need a timer. It does talk to you a little bit about each of your manipulations, so please make sure you do that. Here are your review questions. What do I expect to be turned in? I expect that you are able to put in your data and your answers to your review questions. So you should have the data page uploaded and a second upload for your answers to your review questions based on your data. So this might take you 2 class periods to do, and this is going to be the final assignment before I come back. So this is going to be for today as well as into next week, Tuesday, and then I will see you on Thursday. All right, everybody. Bye-bye.